So thank you guys so much for being here. This is really exciting. Somebody asked me as they were walking in, did you expect this many? And I said, I did. Because you know what? When someone says nutrition at the beginning of the year, usually lots of people come. So I'm so happy that you're here. We're just going to jump right in. This is a Power Pose Nutrition presentation. So who and what is Power Pose Nutrition? It is an online, one-on-one nutrition company that offers nutrition coaching services. My name is Lexi Nussbaum. I am the head coach, and this is Andrea Wagner. She is the assistant coach. So a little bit of a background about me. I spent my life doing exercise. That was very important to me. I went to the University of Toledo on a scholarship to pole vault. So obviously at a D1 school, they care a lot about you. You're basically getting paid to perform for them. So food was important. We were assigned dietitians, so we got some assistance there, and that became my focus that, wait a minute, food is actually fuel. So through my years of college, I had a pretty structured regimen. I understood what my body needed at certain times to help me perform my very best. Then I graduated college, and I became an adult, or so they said, okay? So my life wasn't as structured as it used to be. I had random meetings at random times, I had a husband, I had all sorts of things. I still have a husband, but it was new for me at that point. I didn't have that structure that I used to have in college, and so I needed something else that was going to be more flexible. And that is when I hired my own nutrition coach, and she really instilled in me and helped me, and we actually still work together to this day, and how to be more flexible when you approach eating or the quote dieting. So that's really where Power Pose Nutrition was formed, in a way for people to understand that it's okay to have food, it's okay to be flexible, and truly it's really important to have all of that for something to be sustainable. So my day job, you could say, is the general manager here at CrossFit Orville and Zephyrs Fitness. And so as a coach, I see athletes all the time, hour upon hour. They all come in, they all leave, and they work really, really, really hard in the gym. But a lot of times the nutrition piece is just not there for them. So they work for years, and they come to us and say, dude, I've been doing this for 5 years, and I haven't lost a pound, or maybe 3 pounds, but in 5 years, it's not that great. Or I've gained weight, and they wonder, what on earth should I do? And a lot of times it's that nutrition piece. So I felt as if the nutrition piece was missing from our gyms, and so that is why I started Power Pose Nutrition. Now I'll give the mic to Andrea so she can introduce herself.
Hey everyone, like Lexi said, I'm the assistant coach for Power Pose Nutrition, and one of the reasons I think me and Lexi make a great team is because we have very different experiences and backgrounds when it comes to fitness and nutrition. So mine is really completely opposite of Lexi in that growing up, I really never worried about, I just kind of lived a generally active lifestyle with sports and things like that, but never really worried about nutrition, never actively worked out. So through high school, college, that really wasn't something I put my energy and focus towards. Then similarly to Lexi though, graduating college, starting working, getting married, all those things, developed some unhealthy habits, and over the course of years started gaining weight. And so finally, about 2.5 years ago is really where this all started for me when I joined CrossFit Orville. So focused on exercise for about 6 months, when realizing, just like Lexi described, you have people who work out all the time, don't quite get the results that they need, and that's when I realized I really needed to focus on my nutrition as well. So at the time, Lexi, this was about 2 years ago, Lexi wasn't actually a certified nutrition coach at that time, but knew way more than I did, and kind of took me under her wing as an unofficial coach. So during that 2 years, I just learned so much about food, nutrition, and realized that it's something that I'm really passionate about. So back in quarantine, when I was stuck at home, not a lot to do, I actually went and got my nutrition certification and started coaching people in July, so about 6 months ago, which worked out perfectly with the launch and timing of Power Pose. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Lexi, and we can jump into the content for today.
So today we are going to go over quite a few different things. On the left-hand side, you can see some of the bullet points that we're going to hit on. The major one is this is for everyone. Does not matter your goal. We're going to go over a slew of goals, and I think at least one of the things we touch on is something that's at least in your head as far as something you'd like to accomplish. We'll talk about what makes up your food. We'll talk about food on a spectrum. We'll talk about the label and how to turn packaged goods around and read what's on the label. We'll also talk about different levels of how you can accomplish the things that we're talking about today. We will get in a little bit about setting macronutrients. We're going to talk about what on earth a macro even is here in a minute, tips and tricks, how to stay accountable, and then any questions that you might have through the course of this presentation. And what all of that combined is supposed to leave you here with is a sense of empowerment, knowledge, education, pride in yourself, because you deserve it. Every single person deserves to have freedom and food, and if you don't have that, you need it, and it takes time and it takes practice, but I hope that you leave here with all those papers in your hand with some sort of a plan, and everybody's plan will be different no matter where you are on your journey. If you're like Andrea, tracking macros as my client for years now, she's much further on her journey than someone who's like, macro, what are you talking about? I run a macro in Excel. That's not it, okay? So you're gonna have a chance to learn where you can fit in the journey of food.
So at PowerPose, we get a lot of clients coming to us with all sorts of different goals. So of course there's the physical goals or the physique goals with losing weight, gaining weight, building muscle, but there's a lot of things outside of your like physical appearance that people want to work on as well. So things like improving your energy throughout the day, getting better sleep, improving your performance in the gym, getting better control of your eating habits, healthy aging. So there's a whole list of different types of goals that people have up on the screen. And most people don't really just come to us with one single goal. So hopefully several of these things on the screen kind of resonate with you. So really, regardless of what your goal is, there's a few areas that you should be focusing on. So all of these goals that I just described, like when you're working on any of these things, you want to be focusing on all 6 areas in this pie chart. So basically there's nutrition, so obviously looking at how much food you're eating, the types of foods you're eating, the quality of the food that you're eating. There's sleep, so making sure that you're getting like good quality and quantity of sleep. Water, making sure your body's properly hydrated. Stress management, so making sure you're not running around like a stressed 10 out of 10 every single day. Exercise, so just getting regular exercise throughout the week. Movement, so this is really looking at your lifestyle outside of that hour that you spend in the gym. And then, so really throughout this presentation though, now this is a lot of content. To cover all of these different areas, we would need like a 3-day seminar. So today, to simplify this, we're really just gonna be focusing on that nutrition piece of the pie. And to start with that, you heard Lexi mention macros earlier, so now we're gonna actually jump into what makes up our food. So there's 2 kind of big buckets, macronutrients and micronutrients. And over the next few slides, I'm gonna be going over each one of these, starting with the macronutrients. So there are 3 types of macronutrients: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So starting with carbs, you can see a few examples up here on the screen. So some examples of carbs are gonna be like your fruits, your apples, grapes, pineapples, pears, some different starchy vegetables, potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, things like that. And then anything that comes from any type of like grain, so bread, oats, pasta, those are all examples of carbs. So each macronutrient has a specific caloric value kind of assigned to it. So you might be wondering, how do macros fit into carbs? So 1 gram of carbs is equal to 4 calories. And each macronutrient serves an important role for the body. So it's really important that we consume all 3 macronutrients and in the right quantities. So carbs' function here is that it's the primary source of fuel for our bodies. And one cool thing with carbs is that when we eat them, we can actually store them on our bodies to be used in the future in small quantities. So basically, let's do the example of I eat a bagel for breakfast, which is a carb. If I go work out in a few hours, my body can store those carbs. That way, that can fuel my workout hours later. So next, I'm going to start talking about fats. So if you recall, carbs, everything has a caloric value assigned to it. Carbs was 4 calories per gram. For fats, it's actually more. It's the most calorically dense macronutrient. So there's 9 calories per gram. Some examples, again, you can see them along the bottom. So things like avocados, nuts, full-fat dairy, oil. Those are all examples of fat sources. Now, when I'm saying fat, I'm really referring to dietary fat. I know when you hear the word fat, a lot of people think of like unwanted fat areas on your body, but those two things are really different. So dietary fat is important for a lot of reasons, being it helps with balancing your hormones. It's important for being able to absorb certain types of vitamins, and it's also how we get different omega fatty acids into our bodies, which are also very important. So just like carbohydrates, we're able to store fats on our body in large quantities to also be used in future use. So this leaves me at the last macronutrient, which is protein. So when we get clients at PowerPose, most of the time people are under eating protein. It's very rare that I see someone who's actually eating the amount of protein that they should be. And protein is extremely important. So you can see a few examples of protein up on the board. So it's going to be like your meats, your chicken, beef, pork, things like that. Seafood like shrimp and salmon or fish, and then there's also lots of vegetarian options as well, like tofu. So if you recall, everything has a caloric value assigned to it. So carbs was 4 calories per gram, fat was 9 calories per gram. Protein is actually the same as carbs, so it has 4 calories per gram. And protein is super important for our bodies, so it helps us build muscles and tissues, it helps us produce hormones, enzymes, antibodies, all those things that help our body just function. And it also helps keep us full and satisfied throughout the day. One unique thing with protein that's different than carbs and fats is that we can't store it on our bodies. So basically, it's really important that you get adequate amount of protein every single day, because if I eat too much protein today and not enough protein tomorrow, this extra protein that I'm eating today isn't going to help me tomorrow because there's no way to store it on my body. So it's really important that you get protein every single day. So the next thing is micronutrients. Before I really jump into this, I do just want to kind of give like a call out that if all of this stuff is really new to you, like if you are, everything that I just covered on macros, if you've never heard of that before, then just as far as like how do you prioritize this, it could seem a little bit overwhelming. So if you've never heard of this stuff, worry about macronutrients initially. That's kind of like the biggest priority. Once you get good at macronutrients, that's when you can kind of start worrying about all the micronutrients. But we are going to do a quick overview on micronutrients today as well. So micronutrients can really be broken into 4 different groups. The first are vitamins. So vitamins are your organic molecules that are found in whole foods. So over the last couple slides when I gave examples of those macronutrients, those were all examples of whole foods. So things, your fruits, your veggies, your grains, those are all examples. And vitamins are really just needed, or all the micronutrients, they get their name micronutrients because they are needed in small quantities in the body. Minerals are inorganic compounds that come from soil and water. So if you think of like a plant growing, the plant is going to absorb the minerals from the soil and water around it, and then when we eat that plant, our bodies get to absorb those minerals. Then next is phyto and myconutrients. So phytonutrients are the nutrients found in plants, whereas myconutrients are the nutrients found in like fungi, things like mushrooms. And then lastly is zoonutrients. So zoonutrients are the things that are found in any kind of animal product. And then the important thing to note with zoonutrients is this is really where it comes, like the quality of your animal products come into play. So if I have chickens, so I'm going to use chickens as an example. My chickens are completely free range, so they have access to 2 acres of land, they're running and walking around, they have access to fresh air, fresh water, sunshine, they're scavenging for bugs all the time. That's like how a chicken is supposed to live. They're living their natural diet, they're getting movement. So my eggs that I get from my chicken, or if I had meat chickens, is going to be really, really nutritious and full of micronutrients because the chicken is like in the best conditions possible. Compared to a chicken that is like in a mass farm where they don't get to move around a lot, they're stuck in cages, they don't get access to outdoors. Those chickens are going to have the nutrients are going to be much less because they're not raised in the best conditions. So that was an overview on micronutrients, and now Lexi is going to take all of that information and figure out, okay, like how do I actually apply this in my everyday life?
Yes. Okay. So, in one of the packets that we gave you is a set of papers that says "Eat more, eat some, eat less" on them, and they are categorized by the macronutrients: carbs, proteins, and fats. But even still, if carbs, proteins, and fats kind of confuses you, you can make choices along the eat more category as opposed to the eat less category. So we're gonna kind of go through these and explain to you why these fall into different categories. So at the top left of the screen, on my screen here, is chicken breast. Does anybody know if that's a carb, a protein, or a fat? Shout it out. Protein, good. Sandy, good job, Sandy. Cool. So that is a protein. That is going to be, the chicken breast, just like shown here, is going to be the least processed form. So eat plenty of chicken breast is what this is saying, okay? Eat some is going to be a meat jerky of sorts. So a little bit processed, but not necessarily the most processed. And then on the eat less category is the fried chicken. Now notice, nowhere did I say eat none or don't eat, because let's face it, if you don't eat for like a period of time, you will at some point, it's human nature, go and eat that food. And not just one, not just two, but like 5, okay? So we're not talking here about, oh, I don't eat carbs. Oh, that's not cool, okay? We're not talking about that sort of thing. We're talking about everything in moderation, and there's not anything that's off limits, okay? Literally, every single person in this whole entire room should not have something off limits unless you have some sort of intolerance or some sort of medical condition that takes food off the chart, okay? If you just choose to avoid a food, you're really setting yourself up for when you're at your kid's birthday party and there's cake, you suddenly have 4 pieces. Or you hate yourself or you hate the party because you didn't have the cake. So we're talking about lifestyle here and moderation. So next, carbohydrate. Can you see that on the left side is eat more? That is potatoes. So regular old potatoes, nothing really different about them. Baked potato, that would work perfectly. In the middle is mashed potatoes. So a little bit adjusted, but pretty much mashed potatoes. And then on the eat less category is the French fries. So same concept here, not don't eat at all, just eat less. And then lastly, in our fat category, we have almonds. And then in the middle there would not necessarily be a plain nut butter. Instead, it would be like a flavored nut butter. So we're going to get into some of this here in a minute, but it would be some of the flavored spreads that have a nut base, not necessarily just the peanuts, that's the peanut butter, okay? And then lastly, we have a granola bar with almond products in it. That's going to be the most processed and what you want to stay away from. Okay, so again, if the macro concepts kind of confuse you, we're going to try to break this down even more, but generally speaking, it's really a good idea to look at your chart, the eat more, eat some, eat less, and just keep that in perspective. Because if you center your diet around the eat more and the eat somes, to Andrea's points, you're going to get some of those really good micronutrients. You're going to get some benefits really without much calculation at all. So the next thing that we are going to go into is learning the labels. Because a lot of times it's like a foreign language for people. They go to the grocery store all the time. But to turn the label around, it starts to look like Chinese, okay? And it's not. It's plain and clear if you know how to read them. So we're going to play a fun little game here. We're going to start passing out a few different items. And we're going to go through what's on the labels and what's in the ingredients. Okay, so we're going to start. Let's start with the peanut butter. Okay, so there's 2 peanut butters out there. One's peanut butter's here. Oh, perfect, peanut butter. Okay, so Maddie, tell us what your peanut butter says on the front. So what is your peanut butter? It is Natural Jif Creamy Peanut Butter. Cool. And then, Mr. Shalala, tell us what's the label say? Just the front. Santa Cruz peanut butter. Yes. Okay, so they're both peanut butter. So we talked about macronutrients. So let's turn to the back. And I want you to find where it says carbohydrate. Maddie, how many carbs does your peanut butter have? 8 grams of carbs. Mr. Shalala. How many? 5 grams of carbs. Okay, 5 to 8, that's, in our world, that's no difference, okay? Matt, how much protein does yours have? 7 grams. 8 grams of protein. So far, carbs are the same, protein's the same. Fat. 16 grams of fat. 16 grams of fat. Okay. So would you tell me, after we just went through the carbs, proteins, and fats, do those two have the same macros? Yes or no? Yes, they have the same macros. Now, let's take it a step further and decide what category we'd put each of those in. The eat more, eat some, eat less. We're going to determine that based on the ingredient list. So, Maddie, what is in your peanut butter? Peanuts, sugar, palm oil, salt, and molasses. What's in your peanut butter? Organic roasted peanuts. 1% less of salt. So how many ingredients did Maddie's have? More than like 5? Yeah, 5. And how about Mr. Shalala's? 2. So where would you put Maddie's peanut butter? Eat more, eat some, eat less. Good. Yeah. Eat some, eat less. Personally, they don't taste any different, so I'd put them on like the eat less category. Where would you put Mr. Shalala's peanut butter? On the eat more. It's just only peanuts, okay? So we're gonna play this a few more times in case you're like, what just happened? So who has the syrup? Lapierre has 1. Okay, oh good, Jesse has another. All right, so Jesse, what is your label, the front part of what kind of syrup do you have? Pure Ohio maple syrup. Good. Lapierre, what do you have? Log Cabin Traditional Rich Tasting. Doesn't get better than that, does it? Oh, it does, but we'll get there in a minute. Okay, now turn it to the back. And Lapierre, tell me how many carbs are in a serving of your syrup? 28 grams of carbs, okay? And what's your serving size? 2 tablespoons. Okay. Jesse, what's your serving size? 4 tablespoons. So if you can do quick math for us to make it an even, can you divide your carb number by 2, give or take a bit? Okay, so how many carbs for 2 tablespoons? 26 and a half. Okay, so pretty much the same as Lapierre's. Lapierre's is 25, Jesse's is 26. Lapierre, how much protein does yours have? 0. Okay, no worries, that's fine. Jesse, how many grams of protein does yours have? 0. Okay. How about fat, Lapierre? 0. Okay. Jesse? 0. Okay, so again, macronutrient speaking, they are the exact same macros. And they would be a carb source because they don't have fat or protein in them. That's a side note. Now let's hear the ingredients. Lapierre, what's in your syrup? Corn syrup, water, sugar, salt, natural flavors, sodium, X something. Okay, good. Caramel color in there too? That tastes so good. Okay, cool. Jesse, what is in your maple syrup? Pure maple syrup out of the Amish saps of Holmes County. Woo! Okay, so where would you put Jesse's maple syrup? Towards the eat more side or towards the eat less side? Eat more side, yes. Now how about Lapierre's? Like way on the eat less or like eat never, okay? Because honestly, those maple syrups taste the same. So it's a great swap. So if you're sitting here like, wow, my cupboard might be full of like eat less or like eat never stuff, those are some easy swaps. You don't even have to worry about, you could worry about quantities, but you could just start by adjusting some of those major things in your cabinets, okay? Who else? Oh, Stan. Oh, this is going to be good, real good. Okay, So Sandy has a diet soda, Diet Pepsi. Sandy, how do you feel about Diet Pepsi? Sandy loves Diet Pepsi. I targeted her just a bit. And Aaron has sparkling water, okay? So let's turn it around. Sandy, how many calories does your soda have? 0 calories. Oh my. Wow. Wow. Good. Okay. Aaron, how many calories does yours have? 0. Okay. Sandy, what does your soda have in the ingredient list? Oh, you can't even read them. You can't even read them. Carbonated water, caramel coloring, aspartame, acids and stuff, chemicals and stuff, but 0 calories. We won't even get into how that is 0 calories. That is a whole nother 4-hour session. But that's the key here. It is a horrible thing that these companies are doing, but 0 calories ingredients are where? On the Eat More category or on the Eat Never in My Life category? Eat Never in My Life category. Eat Never in My Life. Over this way for you guys. Yep. Now now Aaron, let me hear what's in yours. Spring water, okay, yep, CO2 and natural flavors, cool, and 0 calories as well. So macronutrients speak, they're the exact same. But if you were to put them on the category, the diet soda is gonna go way towards the eat less, and the spring water is gonna go on the eat more spectrum, okay? Did we have anything else? Does anybody else have any food in there? Oh, yes, we do. Oh, good, okay. So, Sarah, what is your food item? A 12-gram protein fuel bar. Who makes it? Special K? Kellogg's and branded Special K, right? It's a Special K thing? Okay, cool. Andy, what do you have? Okay, an RX bar, like a packaged good still, chocolate sea salt flavor. Okay, cool. Now, flip it over. Let's hear the macros. So, Sarah, how many carbs does your bar have? 22 grams of carbs in that bar. Okay. Andy? 23 grams, so just about the same. How many fats, Sarah? 5 grams of fat. Okay. 9 grams. Okay, so Andy's bar is a little higher in fat. And let's hear protein, Sarah. 12 grams. Andy, 12 grams. Okay. Now, Andy, tell us what's in your RX bar. So egg whites, cashews, almonds, chocolate, natural flavors, sea salt. Okay, cool. Sarah, what is in your bar? Soy protein isolate, corn syrup, sugar, chocolate-flavored chips, fructose, dextrose probably, what's that? Whole grain water. Okay, so where would you put Sarah's granola bar? On the Eat Less? Yep, I'm seeing some thumbs. That's right, that's correct. Andy's granola bar, where would you rank his? More on this side. Yes, that's absolutely right, okay? So this little game can be done every time you're in the grocery store, and truly, these items are usually very, very close. As a random side note, we both have time at Smucker's. Andrea works at Smucker's, and I used to. And so we're very familiar with the consumer packaged goods space. And so you have to look closely, but they are there. Usually the better choice is very close, okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, cool. So now we've gone through what a macronutrient is. We've gone through what a micronutrient is, some of the science behind it. We've talked about better choices, how you can choose between items, looking at their macros and their ingredients. And now we're going to actually talk about how you can incorporate this and little baby steps that you can take to get yourself on the right track.
Okay, so in society today, like general like dieting culture is like this like all-in mentality. Like starting tomorrow or starting Monday, I'm gonna go to the gym 5 days a week and cook dinner every night and eat super healthy all the time. And that just doesn't last long. You know, it might last a week or two, and then you get burned out and overwhelmed and end up doing whatever you were doing before. So we really believe here at Power Pose in breaking things up into baby steps, like Lexi said. So kind of easing your way into this process. And so up on the board, we have some examples, and this is one of the handouts that you guys have too. So we've really looked at how do we break down the nutrition piece of the pie into smaller baby steps so it's not so overwhelming. So there's kind of 6 different steps we've outlined here, and I'll talk through each one. So the first one is if you've never tracked your food, you have no idea how many calories you eat, you have no idea what types of macronutrients you eat, really starting at step 1, so tracking your food intake. So this is eating like you always eat every single day, but just starting to track it. We use an app, MyFitnessPal, and that's what most of our clients use as well. After you do that for about 2 weeks, now you have a baseline and a general idea of what types of foods you eat, how much you eat, and then you can kind of move on to step 2. Also in your packet, there's 2 different, or in all of your stack of papers, there's 2 packets. One on calculating your calories and macronutrients, and one on adjusting them. So the next step would be figuring out, well, now I know how much I currently eat, how much should I be eating? So that takes you into a calorie goal. So the next thing would be to work on just hitting a calorie goal. So still not really worrying about those macronutrients just yet, and just working on hitting a calorie goal. Once you can do that consistently for 2 weeks, then you can kind of start introducing the macronutrients. Like I said earlier, protein is almost always the most under-eaten macronutrient, so that's why we kind of highlight it first in step 3. So once you can consistently hit a calorie goal within 50 to 100 calories a day for 2 weeks, then you can start introducing a protein goal. So at this point, you would be trying to hit a calorie goal and a protein goal every day. Once you can do that consistently for 2 weeks, then you can look at hitting a carb range goal in addition. What I mean by that, I'm just going to give a general example. This isn't for anyone specific, but let's just say my calorie goal is 2,000 calories. So I'm going to try to hit 2,000 calories a day. Let's say my protein goal is 130 grams, so I'm going to try to hit that. And now I'm going to add in a carb range. So I'm going to try to hit 200 to 220 grams of carbs a day. So not a specific number, but falling within a range. And just as like a random side note too, in your packets, like I said, we tell you how to calculate your ideal calories for maintenance. If you don't know what that means, it's explained in the paperwork. But when you calculate your ideal calories, there's really nobody in this room, with the exception of all the children, that should be eating less than like 2,000 or maybe 1,800 calories. So like if you're falling below that 1,800 to 2,000 calorie mark when you're doing your calculations, don't hesitate to reach out to us and show us what you're working on. We don't mind like reviewing it and helping out with that too. But that was a side note. So then once you're good at hitting a calorie goal, hitting a protein goal, getting your carbs within a specific range, then you can kind of go to full-blown macro tracking. So here you're going to have a calorie goal, a carb goal, a fat goal, and a protein goal that you're trying to hit most of the time every single day. Once you become good at that, now obviously we just talked through plenty of ways where you can do like simple swaps with things in your kitchen with just, instead of this peanut butter, I'm going to buy this one instead. But really, once you get good at hitting all of these goals, you can move into step 6, which is going to be really focusing on your food choices. So things like increasing your fiber intake, reducing your sugar, adding anti-inflammatory foods to your diet. So that's where you can really focus on all these kind of smaller, that's where like the micronutrients come into play. So once you become good at all of those things, then kind of progressing to that step 6. So this kind of shows how you can break that nutrition piece of the pie into a bunch of baby steps. But again, if we think back to that beginning of the presentation when we talked about we have more than just nutrition that goes into hitting a goal. There's all sorts of things. And so it can be really overwhelming to think, okay, how do I work on all of these things at the same time? So we give an example, and this, again, depending on your experience, your history, what you know, some people might be able to take a route like this, but there's a lot of people who, their steps are going to look very different, and that's where like personalized coaching comes into play. But let's just start with a theoretical person out in the crowd today who has never tracked their calories or macros, doesn't know how much they eat, doesn't really know how much water they drink consistently, doesn't track that, doesn't work out regularly, and also doesn't work towards any kind of step goal every day. So here's this theoretical client. What does the first couple weeks and months look like for them working on all of these different things? So initially, like I said, you'd start out from a nutrition perspective, just level 1, just figure out how much you eat, get a baseline, and maybe set a simple water goal of like 60 ounces of water a day. So for 2 weeks, they're gonna work on how much food do I eat, and I'm gonna try to drink 60 ounces of water every day. Once they do that for 2 weeks, then you can kind of progress to the next step. So generally with our clients, we always work on making a change, implementing it for 2 weeks consistently. Once you do it consistently for 2 weeks, then you can make another change. So once you can do that consistently, you could move on to the next step, which would be like the weeks 3 and 4 that I have outlined here. Or sorry, weeks 1 and 2 outlined here. No, 3 and 4, sorry, I got lost. Okay, weeks 3 and 4. So once you know a baseline, then you can start hitting a calorie goal. So now weeks 3 and 4, you're gonna work on hitting a calorie goal, and I hit 60 ounces of water every day, so I'm gonna increase my water goal up to 70 ounces instead. Once I do that consistently for 2 weeks, then I can move on to the next set, which would be nutrition level 3. So I'm gonna hit a calorie goal and a protein goal. I'm gonna drink 70 ounces of water a day, and now I'm gonna try to work out 3 days a week regularly. It can be for 15 minutes, any kind of like regular exercise that works for you. Once you do that consistently for a couple weeks, then you can move on to add another goal. So an example would be moving to that nutrition level 4, drinking 70 ounces of water, working out 3 days a week, and trying to hit 6,000 steps a day. So even though like week to week these seem like really small minor changes and like they're not going to add up to that much, individually, but when you look at the course of over 2 months, so I just outlined what 2 months of progression could look like for someone. You started out with a person who has no idea how much they eat, what types of foods they eat, how much water they drink, don't have any kind of like regular activity, to 2 months later, now we have somebody who consistently hits a calorie goal, a protein goal, a carb goal, a water goal, they work out regularly, they get steps regularly. So this again shows 2 months, and then multiply that over the course of a year of just consistently every few weeks adding more and more to this. So over the course of 2021 and 11 months from now, you can really truly be a different person than you are today just by slowly making these small changes over time. So next, I'm going to hand it over to Lexi, and she's going to go as far as one thing that a lot of people struggle with is the accountability and how to keep track of all of this. So she's going to go over that.
Cool. So you, again, might be sitting there thinking like, man, this is a lot of work. And it really is. I mean, I'm not going to tell you any different. It is a lot of work, but it's something if you care about yourself, you care about your kids, you care about your kids' kids, and you want to see them interact and you want to be a part of their interactions, then, it's going to be really important. And a lot of times it's easy to snap the newest fad like pill or the newest fad like drink or supplement of some sort that's lose 30 pounds in 30 days. And every single time, and you might see a great picture, you might see an awesome transformation picture that's like, dude, if I just did this for 30 days, look what I would be. But we have clients that have come to us that have done that time and time again. And furthermore, there are people that have done that time and time again. And every time they go through one of those restrictive diets, they plummet to a body weight low, celebrate that, and then weeks, months, years even later, they've actually gained weight higher than what they started at when they initially went for this like super fun take this pill type thing. So truly staying away from the fad, if it looks easy, it's probably not worth your time, as tempting as it is, and it takes just hard work. Just like a lot of the faces that I'm seeing in the crowd, I see at CrossFit every day, I see at Zephyrs every day. You put in a lot of work physically training, so it's the same concept. This whole food thing is a lot of work. But this calendar, we jotted up and we gave you one in your packet, and it can be kind of helpful to start to see how am I doing in a month's time. So what I have shaded here in the green is 80% consistency. So that might surprise you. There are very few reds. 80% consistency is a lot of greens and a lot of work, okay? So before you give up on something, especially like this that takes work, you have to do some sort of exercise like this to really understand how much of a try you've given it. Because if you haven't given it as many greens as this or more, then really you have no leg to stand on when you wonder why on earth your diet did not work or why on earth your macros did not work. And so what this calendar is showing for this imaginary client, their goal is to sleep 7 to 9 hours a night. Their water goal is 80 ounces or more. They want their goal to exercise 4 times a week, and they also have a goal to track their food. So again, this is kind of playing into that graph that we showed you, the sleep, water, stress management, all of those things. We've kind of consolidated them into those 4 brackets. So every day that they did their goals got shaded in green, and then every day that they did not was shaded in red. And so again, you can see that consistency and that dedication, and honestly, the work. And so if I had any suggestion for you today, it would be to take all of the packets that we gave you, go home, set them out on your kitchen table, and start prioritizing. Start using some of the skills and tips and tricks that we talked about to make a plan for you. So what's week 0 to 2 gonna look like for you? What's 2 to 4 gonna look like for you? Just take baby steps, but it does take a period of time of organizing and sorting it out, because it is not just the freedom in food, the sustainability is not something that just happens in a second by the drink of a shake, okay? That's not sustainable, true freedom, because those people have no idea how food works, and it's a lot more empowering to understand how food works so that you don't have any restrictive thoughts and you actually have a successful diet, whether that's weight gain, weight loss, whatever it may be. Diet meaning the intake of food, okay? Your food that you eat. So, that's where I'm going to leave it. Does anybody have any questions? We'd love to spend the next few minutes answering questions. Obviously, like Andrea mentioned earlier, if you have very specific questions as you're calculating things, you're certainly welcome to reach out to us. Also, we're very present on social media, Instagram as well as Facebook. So if you have either of those, find us. We'd like to share a lot of free tips and tricks and suggestions. Lapierre has a question. Let's hear it. Yeah, great question. So he said, how do you balance somewhat healthy restaurants with this? And he used the example of Chipotle. So when I go to a restaurant, I try to simplify what's on my plate, no matter what I ordered, to the best of my ability. Now, this does take practice, like we've talked about. But let's say at Chipotle, you order, what do you like to order, Pierre? A chicken burrito. Okay, cool, that's fine. So when you go to Chipotle and you have the chicken burrito that you order, like he mentioned, it generally, the fast food or just the restaurants generally fall on the maybe eat some categories. Okay, that's totally fine. But we want to try to dissect what's in that chicken burrito, ingredients-wise, to start kind of putting them in macro tubs. So okay, the burrito that's literally wrapping the whole thing is a tortilla, flour. So that would be a carb. So you're okay, that's a carb. Then you get chicken on there, I'm sure. Okay, so chicken, that would be a protein. Do you get beans or anything like that on there? We'll have your own, but you get the concept. We'll spare you from your whole order. But the cheese, let's say, that would fall under the fat category as far as macros goes. Maybe some guac in there, same concept. So you can, again, kind of dissect your meal and start to say, okay, that was that was a carb, that was a couple servings of fat, that was a couple servings of protein, and that's then how you can play into your daily totals, even by being at a restaurant. Did that answer your question? That's a great question. Okay, so Lapierre asked, cheat meal, he stated, cheat meals are off in the distance for people that are just starting. I'll get back to that in a second. And then he asked if his Chipotle would fall into the plan, or if we would say oh, that was just a cheat meal. So the answer to his second question is no. If it falls into the plan, it's in. Yes, truly, the quality of food is very important. But you can still make progress in your journey by eating lower quality foods. So taking, level 6, as we showed in our diagram there, is like swapping out major things and incorporating some chia seeds and hemp seeds, all those things, flax seeds. But your Chipotle, as an example, would flow right into your daily total. So there would be no need to avoid Chipotle. It would just be like, oh, in the course of the day, that was like maybe not, that wasn't home cooked, but that's okay, I would say, generally speaking, in my day, I'd like to say, if I looked at it as a pie, 75 to 85% is like eat more choices, and then 25% daily is like eat less. So maybe it's like, I got Old Carolina fries with the chicken breast that I made at home, like that, those are good. Or maybe that would be an example. So yes, cheat meals. The second question is, I like to say we do start all of our clients off pretty much right away with a weekly cheat meal. So we keep it within like 200 to 300 calories, but that does allow them to incorporate some like fun or untracked fun, you could say, as far as cheat meals go. Any other questions? Oh yeah, Russ. Yeah. Do you want to answer that? Okay, that's kind of a loaded question. I'll repeat the question. So Russ asked if you have, correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, if you have a caloric goal and you eat through the day, and then in the evening, finally, like 10 o'clock at night, you get a chance to like actually track it, write it all down, and you're like, oh, I'm 400 calories shy. Is that what you're getting at? Do you eat your 400 calorie meal right then and then go to bed, or do you not? That is the question. Now, do you want to answer it, or do you want me to? Okay, go ahead.
So as far as when you eat your food throughout the day, really it doesn't, like, from a hitting your goal perspective, it really doesn't matter. You can, there's all sorts of things out there about like, don't eat past 7 o'clock or whatever. Your body doesn't magically change how it digests food and like what it does with the food after a certain time of day. So you can eat food at any hour that you want to. It's really just about fitting it into your allowance of food for the day. Now, later on down the road, there's some different things as far as like if you're trying to improve performance in the gym and different things like that, where you worry a little bit more about when you eat certain types of foods. But just in general, to hit these goals that we've been talking about today, no, it doesn't matter when, what time and when you eat your food and how you distribute it and that kind of stuff.
And then one thing I'll add specifically, Russ, like if you're not hungry and you're like force feeding yourself at 10 p.m., like everything Andrew said, and then add a little common sense to it and kind of make the decision from there. I will also add that when you sleep, you are fasting, okay? So if you get good night's sleep, 7 to 9 hours, you actually spend 7 to 9 hours in a fasted state. And so some people who choose to do intermittent fasting, and that's absolutely fine, but that works for some and it doesn't work for others. And that intermittent fasting is not necessarily everything in moderation. Like just sleeping like a normal human will kind of kill two birds with one stone. So that plays into Russ's comment. If you'd rather go to bed than eat 400 calories, then go to bed and your body will be like, thank you for the sleep. If you're starving, eat the food and then go to sleep. Yeah, that does. Okay, so his question, it would be when tracking macronutrients, and this is going to be for some like, whoa, what's he even talking about? He has goals? Like, I'm not there yet. Like, he's maybe level 2, level 3, level 4. That's okay. If you're level 0, you can hear this for knowledge, but don't feel like you can't go home and do something about this packet because it's too complicated. So he asked, when you're tracking towards goals, if you have a severe-ish deficit in one, so maybe his fat number is like by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, his fat's like well below, his fat intake for the day is well below like his carb and protein. Is it better to go over the carb and protein number to get his fat to where it should be, or like skip it, or what do you do? And so the answer is there's a range, and so for our clients what we like to see is plus or minus 10 grams of carbs and protein per day would be considered a success, and plus or minus 5 grams of fat per day would be considered a success. And so that wiggle room can give you a little bit of room to play around. The other thing that helps, though, is just as you get more and more practice, you start to be able to look at your day and look and say, okay, again, if this speak is way above your head, it's okay. I don't want to complicate things, but let's say you're looking at your day and you're like, I have 100 grams of carbs left, I have 15 grams of fat and 20 grams of protein. You've done it long enough to know you actually don't even need to eat a straight up protein source. You might be able to have other things, and with dietary restrictions it is different, but for others maybe cottage cheese or a bagel with peanut butter on it, and that's going to actually get your protein to the right number as well. Now if you would eat that plus a chicken breast, suddenly your protein would be like way higher than it needed to be for that day. Good question. Lapierre. Yeah, that's a great question. So he said, do you advise weighing, or how on earth do you know? And honestly, I say yes. A food scale, it used to be like an apps. I felt like saying you had a food scale was like one of the sins of the world, okay? But really, a food scale is just a normal kitchen appliance, okay? You can use it to cook, you can use it to bake, you can use it for all sorts of things. And so really, that's gonna be the easiest way to go about it. Some people, for whatever reason, a food scale just doesn't jive with them, and there are like hand portions that you can use. So chicken breast about the size of a palm, you know, there's different things that we use for some of our clients. But certainly when we talk about even just tracking your intake, which is like level 0, you have to get data. Like in any rational decision making, you need data. And so to have data like this is 4 ounces is going to help play into starting, and then over time you'll be able to eye up 4 ounces no problem. So it's something that's good to start with, and then you can grow out of for certain. Any other? Oh, yes, let's hear it. Yes, good question. So any websites to go to for recipes. So we do have it for our clients. We have a folder that is basically recipes that we've collected over the years that we have felt were good and had good macros. As for actual recipe sites, where do you... Andrea can answer this question. She's good in the kitchen. I'm like throw things together kind of in the kitchen. But the one thing I will say before I give it to her is we do share here and there on our Instagrams or Facebooks. Those can be helpful as well. And I recently just did a post on how to pick any recipe in the whole world and track it in MyFitnessPal, which might be helpful to you. But recipes.
Yeah, so as far as recipes, I wouldn't say that I have like a specific website or person that I follow. I really just go like, in my personal experience, I can make almost any recipe healthy with modifications. So we'll start with a recipe and like figure out kind of doing that eat more, eat some, eat less. If there's an ingredient that's like eat less, I'm like, okay, is there a substitute that I can do to move it up to the eat some or eat more column? Or is it something that I can just use less of in the recipe? For example, oil. Oil's really high in fats, and so if you look up a standard recipe, you know, the recipe might say use 2 tablespoons of oil. I'm like, well, I don't really need that. I can use a tablespoon and just cut that oil down. So more so for me, it's just about finding swaps, and that just kind of happens over time as you build your skill set. So when you first get started, you're gonna make a recipe that you always make and build it in MyFitnessPal or however you choose to track, see the macros and be like, oh, that's really good, that actually fits into my day perfectly. Or you're gonna be like, oh, that's really high in fat. What can I do to this recipe? You know, I really enjoy eating this food. What can I do to swap things out to make less fat? Or if you're like, oh, there's not enough protein, could I double the chicken in the recipe to get more protein into it? So it's all just about, like, honestly, we make every type of food you can imagine. Like Lexi said, we like to cook dinner a lot, so we spend a lot of time cooking dinner. And so we eat anything and everything we want to. It's just about trying to figure out how to modify recipes to make it fit, like, into your goals for the day, really. Yes, so the question was, how do you get to a point where you can drink like 80 ounces of water in a day? So A handful of different things. Obviously starting out small. So tracking, going back to like that, like levels of tracking, you can start out with just tracking your water intake. How much water do I drink now? Let's say it's 40 ounces of water in a day. Well, I'm going to set a goal of 50 ounces. Going from 40 to 50, it's only an extra 10 ounces spread out throughout the day. That's not that much different. So you can start out by just making small little goals over the course of time to eventually build up to that 80. It might take, weeks or months to get to that point, but in the grand scheme of things, eventually you're going to get to that 80 and then you're hitting your goal. There's also a lot of different tips as far as ways to make drinking water easier. So getting a water bottle that you really like and drinking from a straw would be an example. There's also different things like drinking like soda water or tea, or even a little bit of black coffee could count. So there's just different ways to also switch up your water as well, so that you're not just always drinking plain water. So, my goal for water specifically is I drink 100 ounces of water a day, and so I would say 80 of that is pure water, and the other 20 is coming from tea or soda water or other things too. So there's ways to just kind of switch it up so it's not so boring, I guess.
I'll add to fruit, and it would be an option if you like to add a little bit of flavor that can help, or like a soda water, LaCroix, or bubbly could also help too. Sandy, what time do you go to bed? Okay. And then what time do you fall asleep, do you think? So maybe, okay, yeah. So the caffeine kind of throws me a little. If you're wired at night, that might be something that could play into the caffeine. But if you're set on caffeine, there are other ways. Green teas, the Fit Aid that we have here would be much more natural ways. This is what I would consider a level 6 or more, but there's adaptogens, like lion's mane and different kinds of powders, essentially mushroom type things that have caffeine in them and also help with energy, that you could add into a smoothie or a coffee very easy, or not a coffee, but a drink very easily to get that benefit without the diet soda. Yeah. Oh, Andrea has something to add.
And just to add to that too, and this is something that we work with clients a lot with, is things like digging down to the root of why do I need the caffeine? Why am I feeling tired and sluggish throughout the day? Is it my sleep? That was the thing on the pie chart. So what can I do to improve my sleep? For a lot of other people, it's that they're not eating enough food. So it's shocking how many clients we get that, I just told you all, your maintenance calories, so how much you should eat to maintain your weight should, again, nobody should be below that 18 to 2,000 calorie mark, and there's going to be people who are much higher than that as well. But we get people coming to us eating 1,000 calories a day, which is just nothing. So if that is, if you fall into that bucket too, you're just not giving your body enough fuel to fuel you throughout the day. So there's a lot of different things too of digging down to that root cause on why am I feeling sluggish throughout the day, and this is, the caffeine's a Band-Aid. How do I just eliminate that completely? Yep, look here. So when you're going out to eat and stuff like that, how important is it to track very accurately versus ballparking how much food you're eating? So a handful of things here. First off, part of it comes down to how often is that happening? So are you going out to eat is it once a month that you're going out and ballparking? That's not really a big deal. Again, we looked at that 80% consistency. One meal out of an entire month isn't a big deal. If it's happening multiple times a week, that's a little bit different. But also with the ballparking, there's a lot of different ways that we can teach people how to get in a better ballpark. So Lexi mentioned there's the hand proportion, so using your fist or your palm to eyeball foods, so that can help improve. But also just as you continue to track more and more and do things at home, so I think Lexi gave the example of weighing 4 ounces of chicken at home. You're going to do that 20 times, and then you're going to know what 4 ounces of chicken looks like. So when you go to a restaurant, you're going to look at your plate and say oh yeah, that's about how much I eat at home, so it's probably 4 ounces, or that looks way bigger than I eat at home. Maybe it's 6 or 8 ounces. So you'll be able to you'll be able to build that skill set over time to help with that as well.
I will also add, when you track in MyFitnessPal, I will just select Gerber's chicken. That's the kind of chicken we we buy. So when I make it at home, I'm tracking it as Gerber's chicken. When I go to a restaurant and get chicken, I'm gonna still track it as Gerber's chicken. I'm not gonna like search for Olive Garden chicken if it was just like plain chicken, like depending on what it was. So I kind of have like favorites that I will like categorize, but certainly like Andrea said, it does matter how many times you're doing the ballparking, but I also would say I wouldn't let it like discourage you and get you off track. Like forge ahead, and it just gets easier and easier. And I actually, people are very surprised by this. I spent a few years, I guess, following a meal plan very specifically, and I was very anti MyFitnessPal because it just like threw me off. Like I didn't like how I couldn't get it exactly to the kind of food I was eating or the brand and everything like that. But my coach said, you just have to do it. You have to do it, and I did it, and I'm like, who would live without MyFitnessPal now? So just practice helps. So, Rayel has one question. Well, this will be the last question, and if you have any other things, please reach out. Rayel, let's hear it. So she loves buffalo sauce. That was the question. That was the statement. Chicken with buffalo sauce, or how do you track sauces? So kind of along the same lines, you can put it on the scale and track it, and over time you start to kind of be able to eyeball it. But the actual act of tracking sauce, what you can do is you can turn your scale on, put the Frank's, is it Frank's hot sauce or something? Okay. Whatever's there, put the bottle of whatever's there on the scale, and it's going to show 600 grams. Then pour on your stuff away from the scale, put the bottle back on the scale, and it's going to show 550 grams. 600 minus 550 is 50, so you just poured 50 grams of buffalo sauce on your chicken. So then you MyFitnessPal, Frank's buffalo sauce, and do 50 grams. That's how I would exactly track it, like that. Yep. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming. We are so grateful. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out or come up to us. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for coming.